Welcome to the video, guys. Mike's back, he's filming. He hasn't gotten surgery yet, but if the filming's a little bit rough, maybe a little bit out of focus, just all I ask is you give him a little bit of understanding.
Just kidding.
Taking a leisurely stroll. Look at the pups. Look at the pups. Love Peter. We got a real bond going on. What do you want?
Hi,
You a
buddy.
good boy? I've abducted this small animal.
Really? Hello, Peter.
It's the best boy. Want to take Riley too? Fun fact, we have to be really careful when we're riding around with Pete and Riley. Pete has kamikazed himself now out of a golf cart and has attempted to out of my lifted truck. I think that he doesn't understand the, I don't think he doesn't have spatial awareness, so he thinks that he's like a foot off the ground when he's really like the equivalent of a skyscraper. So I want to keep them real safe. Just kind of driving in circles, trying to think of things. Let's go to the shop. We do have fantastic news. If you guys remember at FD, I mentioned that I was struggling with front grip issue. We were recommended to run a 275, didn't think it could fit. Johan went to town with a hammer. What do you use, Johan, like an air hammer?
Nope.
No. No, yeah, I use BFH, is it? That what I call it?
BFH. I getcha.
Get it?
Trying to keep it PG. Yeah, a big hammer.
Now you can
And
say it.
a big hammer. Like, big. Pretty much what we did was I put the wheel on. I marked where it was touching. I did remove the spring from the coilover, set the wheel approximately where it's going to be sitting at right height, and then I marked it where it was touching. So this area was touching and this area was touching, and I just went to town, cleared it out, made sure it was turning, and then hit a little bit here. It's tougher, but made some clearance over there, and then I just massaged around it to make it more clearance, because we did had issues rubbing before with the old setup with the 17s, and I droop. This wheel now has even more clearance that I did with the 17s, so we should be good. If anything, once we go down the floor, there'll be more massaging here, which I already anticipated, and I clear a little more up there, but we should be good. It clears the sway bar, it clears the frame rail. If we gotta make other adjustments, it'll be easy, nothing out of the ordinary.
So the best news about this, if you guys remember, we were concerned that we would literally have to cut out the intrusion bars so we could bash in that plate and then have to re-weld them, which is a whole undertaking. And what we were referencing to, there's a plate here, so this is not a very easy thing to massage. So we were anticipating having to cut the intrusion bars to be able to massage it, re-weld them. Didn't have to do that, so it's fantastic. Also, this is an 18-inch 275/35 opposed to a 275/40 17. The overall diameter is a tad bit smaller, which is helpful, but moreover, there are quite a few other guys that are running the same tire, so it makes it easier for inventory purposes for them to have them at the track for us. So that's fantastic. We got front grip now, and then we got the big spicy unit up top. We should probably talk
How
about
to bring it down, yeah. Big boy turbo. No playing around on one.
So if you remember, we talked about briefly running two different turbo setups, the smaller turbo for more response in the smaller tracks, the bigger ones for the bigger bank tracks. Now, Seattle is what we would consider a bigger track. It's a really long first bank. It's not like, say, New Jersey where there's a ton of small corners with lots of dig. So Freddie doesn't want to keep pushing our baby turbo way harder than it wants to.
No.
Concerned head shaking. So we finally have a turbo that doesn't look tiny. So it's the G42 1200. The G35 1050 we had, like, theoretically should cap out between like 850 and 900 safely. This one, what do you think, Freddie? Between like 1,000 and 1,050?
I'm curious. I think it should do at least 1,100 easily.
Usually Garrett's numbers after they rate their turbos are quoted at a crank horsepower, so we usually assume like a 10 to 15% drivetrain loss, and that's how you come up with kind of what you expect it to be at peak efficiency. You could theoretically make the quoted horsepower in wheel horsepower, which I have done on cars before, but back pressure starts to go through the roof, and the turbo becomes less efficient, creates more heat, and IATs go up, and everything gets mad, especially Freddie. We shoot for like a 1-to-1 pressure ratio of like the front side of the turbine to the rear. This canister we've shown kind of like a similar setup. I believe we had, was it on the E36 when we were testing? One of the cars we had one on.
No, I've never made it on that.
Never made it on. Well, I guess maybe it was on this, but we had kind of like a more rudimentary version at first. But anyway, that basically tells us what the pressure is. There's like a coil that diffuses the heat so it's not super hot, and then like smoothens the pulses out of the manifold, right? So
That's what that canister does. It smooths the cylinder pulses down.
Johan made us this beautiful manifold. It's gonna be kind of hard to see it. I'm assuming the turbo might come off at some point so they can see it a little bit more detail. But it has a really, really nice billet collector. He had to make all the runners pretty intricate to be able to fit such a big turbo in there and still be able to get the hood to close.
It was planned and built around the front engine plate. That helped a lot with us having more free room around the engine to make the runners go anywhere we wanted, especially being that the bigger turbo needed to be as low as possible to clear the hood. That means the collector itself would sit lower, therefore the runners will go down further and not typically clear a factory mount on like a Supra or like aftermarket mounts on a 240. Having a front plate, it gave me all the rooms by the side of the block, and pretty much all the runners have all the space around that area. It also gave me room to put the wastegate, you know, in a spot where it didn't interfere with the downpipe, and then it gave us plenty of room for the downpipe to go down. It also sits closer to the block, even though it looks like it's further away. On the other manifold, it was literally touching this panel here, which you could see the runners literally were sitting against that panel. And then to service the car, it was just like hard because you don't have much wiggle room to remove it. This one, I have about an inch, and it boom slides out, comes off easily, no problem.
In terms of changes to the car that you guys might notice or I would notice, quite obviously the manifold being a much different design, there's a good chance it's going to sound a little bit different. Not sure exactly what it's going to sound like, but having a straight 4-inch off the back of the turbo is to before the G35, is it a 3 or 3.5 inch outlet?
It came out at 3.
And then we would flare up to a 4. So it's probably going to have a little bit deeper, a little bit different sound. Probably going to run more nitrous, Freddie, or just, yeah?
Yeah.
So we were running, what, like 100 shot before?
Yeah.
And now what do you think, like 200?
150.
The actual difference, it shouldn't be that crazy. Like I said, on the little tracks it might be more noticeable. I liked staying with the smaller turbo just because, God forbid, we had some issue or a solenoid went bad on the nitro system. It was still very drivable. This thing will probably be a little bit lazier, but we did choose to go with Garrett's G42 1200 instead of their G42 1200 compact, because according to the compressor maps, it looks like this turbo should have a little bit better mid-range. Just if you have a car that's harder to fit this housing, you would want to go with the compact, still make the same power, but maybe lose a little bit of mid-range to have a better, smaller, compact package that could fit under your hood. I hate to interrupt this video, guys, but I have to present you with the word from my sponsor, Elzemug. We got a stack of products here that are going to be available at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't mind my beautiful new table. Shout out Savio, the granite god, and also my brand new bar over there. Big granite god. Savio, the granite god. We have what I was very hesitant about at first. I put my face on some socks, all right? I guess I should have had the pink glasses, but there was an overwhelming response about these socks on social media. We had a very small batch left over from Formula Drift, along with these other socks that we made for Formula Drift. Pretty cool. This one has the sponsor logos in the car. This one has a livery. This one has my ugly noggin. So proceed with caution. I'm letting you guys know this is kind of like a restock, right? So the Racing Division T, we got a restock on. Real cool shirt, but it's not really just a restock. This is more or less what we had at Formula Drift is getting added back to the inventory and will be available online. So the quantities are much smaller. We had a Garrett restock, BC Racing restock, and then also the t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, the S15 shirt, we had a restock in some sizes, not a giant restock, just what we had at Formula Drift is being added back to the inventory. Okay, and my favorite banner that we have ever made is also back in stock. Is also back in stock. So act fast, elzemove.com, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday, today. Don't miss out, or your best friend might get the clout. So this is our old exhaust right here. It's a pretty cool oval exhaust. Now, Johan is planning to make a titanium exhaust for this car. Were you gonna do oval, or are we just gonna do non-oval?
No, round.
We're so high now that it doesn't really matter. So that'll change the sound quite a bit too. But he is designing everything, so it has the same footprint. So we could essentially have this as a spare, or if we need to change turbo setups or everything, it's just like a kind of like a plug and play setup. And then theoretically at the track, if we had to make a change, we could, and it wouldn't be like redesigning the whole thing. We would just kind of have easily swappable things. All right, the next thing that we're gonna nerd out a little bit is the rear suspension setup. The car has been very tough for us to set up. It doesn't really feel right, and we struggle with finding the balance between having the car fast enough and being easy enough to drive. We basically consulted all the people in our circles to try to gather as much information as we could. Freddie took upon himself just learning as much about the basics of suspension as he could, and we all kind of got together, talked about some stuff. Probably the biggest finding, the thing that Freddie pointed out that we never really thought about, when we switched to this new tire this year, the 315 Nitto, we raised the car significantly. And what that does, when you have all of your arms and everything and you raise the car, it points the angle a bit more upwards. Usually this wouldn't be an issue, but we're now at the point where pretty much, let's just say theoretically, like stock height with a car, like stock height that an S15 would come. And then we have these, which are drop knuckles. So typically you would use these on a car that is lower than the standard height on an S chassis. And what that allows you to do is to still have all the suspension arms at the optimum angles, but you're able to essentially move the wheels farther up in the wheel well so you could be lower without ruining the geometry of the car and having your arms flat or even pointed upwards. Because we're at like stock height and we add a drop knuckle to it, it's almost like if we took a stock 240 and we lifted it. So most of the way that the suspension is designed does not work the way it's supposed to. We have really steep angles on the arms, and that affects a lot of different things. And I'm gonna kind of let Freddie fill you in from here. I know anti-squat is a big thing that I fully don't have a grasp on how it works yet and how it affects drifting, but I know now, understanding a little bit more about it, that could be something that I've been fighting.
So with the PBM knuckle not helping us because it has a 25 millimeter roll center correction or drop, we're gonna switch to a stock knuckle, but the stock 240 knuckle is cast. I've seen them break very easily. Sean broke one at Clutch Kickers, so I opted out to get a Z32 knuckle. It's a little bit stronger, and they're about 4 pounds lighter per side. That's our new knuckle. Took all the stock bushings out. I'm gonna press in SPL monoball bushings in them. Then I got a FDF dual caliper bracket. Pretty much we'll use this to maintain dual calipers. One for the foot brake, one for the hydro. Pretty crude. This is like what you think a race car like this shouldn't have, but this is better than what we currently have.
Keep in mind too, like PBM makes a great knuckle. Like I've run them on other cars. This is not in any way, shape, or form us dissing PBM. It's just our car is so high that the drop knuckle is fighting us.
Right.
So it's not that this is a bad knuckle. It's just that it doesn't work for our setup.
Right, you don't need it.
Yeah. So by losing the PBM knuckle, I put a stock knuckle on the suspension and ran it through like a sweep from our rad height to full compression, and the stock knuckle gains more camber, so we're moving a couple control arms on the subframe to reduce the camber gain. That will make it feel like not a stock knuckle.
So I mentioned anti-squat, right? And like I said, I don't fully understand it, but what I do know is it's commonly talked about in drag racing, because when they see a car on launch that compresses down and all the weight gets transferred to the rear of the car, that's inertia and momentum that you are not receiving onto the rear wheels that could be used to propel the car forward and used as grip that is being lost in the suspension. It comes into play with drifting as well, and it can make you faster off the line like a drag car, but in drift, it can affect things like your side bite and how the car is going to react. So Freddie, I know you did some research on how that works, and so what are we changing to, because the rear of my car wasn't doing anything. If you watch the video, like it really never squats, it never compresses, apart from like a few key areas on track. And I think that was part of kind of one of the many weird things about why this car didn't feel like a normal drift car to me.
Yeah, so due to the right head of the car, suspension arm angle, it has a lot of anti-squat in it, and that gives you very fast straight line car. This is probably one of the fastest cars from leaving the chicane up until initiation. But then Adam would always complain the car has no side bite. We would do things to increase side bite with zero change really. visually and from Adam's feedback. So having that much anti-squat is not good for a drift car, great for a drag car. The knuckle will help removing a couple other suspension arms to reduce anti-squat, and that will give us more suspension travel. Currently, the car has under 3 inches of compression from ride height to when you hit the bump stop due to how big the tire is. So we're gonna have to raise the car even more to get more suspension travel out of the chassis. It's not gonna look cool, but hopefully it'll work better.
One of the things that I'm going after with this car is just consistency, right? Like in the rain, it felt so good, and it felt like a normal drift car that I could drive and put exactly where I needed it to. And it felt really good getting a very high points qualifying run and actually feeling like I was in control of the car. I think with these changes that we're gonna make, it's not necessarily gonna make the car any faster. If anything, it's probably gonna make the car slower in drift, but we still have a lot left in the table in terms of mechanical grip and grip in the tire that we're not even fully taking advantage of because we're fighting these other setup issues. So hopefully by making these changes, we'll make it feel more like a normal drift car. The rear end will react like you would expect it to, and we'll be able to kind of tailor the setup to just be an easy to drive car and then add grip where we need to in a more linear and uniform way instead of making the car behave in this bizarre manner.
Yeah, because currently we run very high tire pressure for that tire, and same with our alignment specs, because if we went too low, the car is undrivable. So now we'll use more of the tire and suspension alignment settings to get grip out of the car instead of anti-squat doing all that work.
E36 is actually tucked away in the prep room. Ray and his guy are going to get this thing looking extra pretty for grid life. We kind of ran out of time and we were never able to properly paint underneath the over fender, so it didn't look as nice as we wanted to. We're going to get the whole rear crash structure painted and looking good on that end too. So I'm excited about that. And I also thought I'd mention to you guys, if any of you are going out to Grid Life Alpine Horizon in Colorado, which is technically going to be like next weekend, not this weekend. I misspoke and I said I was going to Grid Life Midwest. I am not. I'm going to Grid Life Alpine Horizon in Colorado at Pikes Peak. I'll have this is what I'm planning to drive, but we also may do some testing with the S15 on the new setup. So if you're going there, you might just catch the S15 ripping around. So I'm pumped. It's a really cool track. Looks like they have pretty cool music lineup. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys out there. One of today's projects was cleaning the old machine room. Look at this place. It used to be gross and like 30 and 4 degrees and stuff. It's looking way better. The goal is to get the hub dyno, the main line, unboxed in here, because even though we were planning to use it in one of the other buildings, this building already is wired with 3-phase, which is what we need to run it. So since we're going to need to tune that S15 before it gets shipped off to Seattle, we're going to try to unbox the main line tomorrow morning, get it set up, and that might be the first car we end up tuning on it, which is pretty exciting. You guys might recognize this thing. You guys might recognize Sean, long-time homie. We've been driving for quite some time. In fact, Sean's actually the first person I've ever tandem with in my life. If we can find it, Mike maybe put the footage in this video. We're gonna go to a really special spot and do some tandems. That's like a secret.
It's gonna be a real
amazing, crazy spot. But before the red S15, you had a red coupe. It was like SR, right?
Yeah.
So, what's this thing?
Just got it for cheap as a shell, wrecked, and rebuilt it and had it for like 3 years now. Now it's got a RB25, wide body.
Sean has been helping us out and killing it behind the scenes for, what, is it like a month now, 2 months?
Yeah.
It's been a minute. But we keep putting off Sean's burnout. He's been really, really scared. He's been nervous.
Not really nervous, but
Just playing. He's playing. It's just like an ongoing joke thing. But yeah, so it's time to do your customary introductory burnout. Woo! Where's the energy, man?
for me,
Yeah.
I got it.
Let's go!
Oh my God. Remember what you said about this thing, right?
What?
Best revving RPM ever.
Yeah, it does.
Response.
It's very responsive car. worried about the health of his engine, but we're trying to convince him that it'd be better for it to blow up here if it's going to blow up than for him to drive all the way to clutch kickers and have it blow up there. So, the logic makes sense. I hope it's okay. He's been ripping it for a while, and the car's sick. That's sick.
And he was worried the whole time.
Yeah, Johan scared him. He's gonna be mad at Johan.
Very
Why?
flammable on this thing.
Oh, really?
You're lighting this thing off.
Bro, the first one you shot on the roof.
I did?
Yes.
I was funny enough.
I bet you that noise he was worried about's gone now.
Alright.
How'd I do?
I stalled.
Great.
I stalled, but dude, to be fair, Johan kind of scared you.
Dude, I was not expecting that. That's why I stalled. I knew when you said that it wasn't true.
I was like, Johan's
When I came
filming
around the
a
first
cell
time.
phone angle in the corner.
When I came first time, I was gonna tell him to hear it, but he wasn't there.
It doesn't.
How's your tire holding in?
It ain't ticking anymore.
What the fuck?
That was a great clip, buddy.
Thanks.
Officially the highest horsepower burnout here.
It was an idea.
I should have kept going. It told me at 212, but it went to 240.
I mean, it sounded healthy.
Yeah, good. I don't hear that noise anymore. RB maybe. Yeah. Oh, we got momentum, dude. We're carrying. Whoa, this is so much more fun and exciting. Did it break? You like suck. Maybe the engine doesn't like water.